So why does a feature episode of my Dempster adventure end up with us taking a road that clearly isn't the Dempster Highway? Well, it's because curiosity gets me into a lot of trouble. James, unfortunately, he's inherited that. Now, curiosity and adventure go hand in hand and usually end up with funny stories if nothing else. So, to start the day, instead of just going up the 500 and change kilometers we were going to be doing along the Dempster, we ended up going south of Dawson City and looking for a ghost town, which, as we previously discussed, means that it doesn't exist and there's no point in looking for it. But what we did end up doing was 20 to 30 kilometers through bush like this, which ended up with a funny story because, as it turned out, about 20 kilometers into that trip in the single track up on the side of a mountain kind of south of Dawson, we met a fella that was cooking bacon in a jet boil out in the middle of nowhere by himself, just sprawled out across the trail. Thankfully, he offered us some, but honestly, it felt a little bit weird to either accept it or not accept it. So we said hi and we parted on our ways and eventually found our way back into Dawson and then headed up to the Dempster, which unarguably would have been a better place to start the day. However, I would have missed out on the bacon story, and that'll be a memory for quite some time. Now, to save us a bunch of time and unnecessary exposition, I'm going to tell a little story here and provide some context for the video. This is important because I don't want to have to throw in all sorts of caveats along this video. Now, when it comes to Arctic adventure in North America, there are two options available to you. The Dalton Highway in Alaska, going from the Alaskan Highway to Dead Horse, and then there's the Dempster Highway, which goes from Dawson City, or approximately Dawson City, all the way to Tuktoyaktuk in the Northwest Territories. Now, there's two reasons that I'm largely going to avoid talking about the Dalton. Firstly is that it doesn't actually get all the way to the Beaufort Sea. It comes up just short in Dead Horse, and then you got to take a van. Secondly is that it's along a pipeline. And while it's not always apparent, it does kind of crisscross or it runs parallel to the road. And in my opinion, it's just not as beautiful as a route as the Dempster. I'll also throw in there that the Dalton is a somewhat easier drive than the Dempster. It's a little more prepared, I guess would be the nicest way to put it. That being said, neither one of them is a truly wild off-road adventure anymore. It still is very bumpy. You very much do need to respect it if you don't have a little bit of time driving on gravel in the mountains or in rougher gravel conditions with washboard and kind of cobblestoney or loose surfaces. Grain of salt when you go up there. Understand where you are on a map. But honestly, it's a lot easier than it was 10 or 12 years ago. The road has been well developed. The section from Inuvik to Tuktoyaktuk is still being developed, although it's in a little more open terrain. So while it's got some heaving and some loose surface, overall it's in pretty good condition and relatively easy to ride from an adventure standpoint. But again, if you're not used to riding gravel, please respect it. If you don't respect the road, you will likely respect the tow truck driver. And from what I heard, it's somewhere around $300 to get them to pick up their phone and take your call, and then $10 to $15 a kilometer per direction. And this is a very remote, very long road, so you absolutely will bleed to get your vehicle back. Now, the last of the details before we get to talk about all the magic of this location is the general kilometers. Eagle Plains, which is the halfway point and the first fuel stop you'll have from Dawson City, is 420 kilometers. Thankfully, they've opened up a card lock at the south end of the Dempster that shaves about 40 kilometers off of that, so you're sitting about 380 to 390 in between the card lock and Eagle Plains. There is zero fuel between, so if you cannot go that far, plus about another 100 kilometers because something always goes wrong, please do not start. Bring a jerry can. Past that, the next stop is Fort McPherson, which I believe is about 250 kilometers north from Eagle Plains, and then the next one is Inuvik, which is about another 130 kilometers or 140 kilometers from there, from memory. Inuvik itself is a reasonably large town, by northern standards anyway. And then for you to get all the way to the ocean, it's an additional 160 kilometers over the Mackenzie Delta through where you end up at Tuktoyaktuk, which is at the Bering Sea, where we want to end up. Last piece of friendly advice before we move on to the magic is tires. Bring tires or tubes, whatever you need. There is, Dempster has a well-deserved reputation of slashing up tires. Again, it's better than it used to be. The shale is a little less prominent than it was the last time I was up here. However, you would be ridiculous to try this road without bringing a spare tire and the means to do it. We brought a lot of tubes because we're on small bikes. We didn't really want to carry the whole tire, so we carried tubes and patches. Also included in your spares, you should likely have a spare air filter. Chances are you can go the whole thing without swapping it out. I ended up having to because we were on a pretty dry day on the way north, and there was just too much silt, and I was riding second in line. And with all the traffic and so on, it just ended up to the point where it was pretty much clogged solid, so I needed to change it out because my bike wasn't running as well as it should be. So I made an editorial choice to split the Dempster Highway into two videos, one going north and one going south. And the reason I did that is because of the condition changes. I think it tells an interesting story going the other direction. So I'm going to save a lot of the geographic and historical information of the Dempster for the second video. And this first video is going to be dedicated to kind of trying to help you understand what makes going to the Arctic unique. Now, of all of the places that I've traveled, the ones that have stuck with me the most all share something in common. We have the Arctic up here in Canada, a variety of different places, including the Arctic Islands far north. There's Atacama Desert in Chile, Patagonia in Chile, Argentina, Antarctica, a variety of places through there, and the Sahara Desert. Now, that seems like a weird top 5 list for somebody that enjoys travel and beauty, but there's something about the balance of being in an environment like this that just makes it a unique experience. Now, my words will fall utterly short in describing what it is about these places that draws me in or that makes it a must-see experience for people. But I'm going to give it my best go. Now, you've seen from the first couple of minutes of the video that there are some amazing mountains in this area, rivers, etc. Right now we're up at kind of a high altitude plateau, and then we're going to descend down to some permafrost area in the Mackenzie Delta. All visually stunning places that are unique, that don't exist very many places on the planet, and certainly not very many places that you can get to. Now, all of those things are great and really visually apparent, and you wouldn't regret a trip where you came up here and that was your expectation. But in order to truly experience the Arctic and what makes it special, you have to stop and you have to watch and you have to listen and you have to feel. Trying to illustrate life up in here, whether it's the animals, the plants, or the people, is like looking at something that's on the edge of a cliff that's been given a millimeter by a millimeter to hold on to, and it's dug its hands in there with a ferocity but a fragility that isn't seen anywhere else on the planet, because there is no place that has such an absence of abundance for it to draw from. In the same way that most of the most memorable, most stunning art comes from people in times of struggle and in times of persistence, nature works the same way. Something about this type of area just strips away all of the noise that makes seeing the most minute things in a pure and unadulterated state. There is no cacophony of noise like there is in a jungle. There is no just overwhelming amount of movement. Everything here speaks in terms of one, but it's beautiful. It is calming and it is pure in a way you can't see in places like this because we simply don't take the time to focus on them. The environment here serves you one thing at a time, whether that thing is one animal, one plant, or one person, and there is something that is just enormously restful to me about that. It forces you to look at those things deeply and try to understand how they can survive in a place like this, how they can thrive in a place like this. How did you come to be here? How did anything come to be here? Why would it come? Which are all questions that you wouldn't stop and ask about something as simple as a flower if you were in a place that had 7 million other flowers. It's not to mean that there's no life up here. In fact, it's way more prevalent than you might think. It's just less in your face. And it really does offer itself to you in a way that allows you to be contemplative about it. And what's interesting about it is that it's not limited to the plant life and the animals. The people up here are very unique as well, and share many of the same characteristics. They are both profoundly deep and fragile at the same time. Not at all weak. The people up here have always been very friendly, very open to me, but they are hardy people. And that is fascinating to me. What drives you to be that way in this environment? What's made your people stay here for this long in an environment that's clearly hostile? The best story, or the funniest story I have of how resilient people are in these areas is I was based for a little while in Resolute Bay on Cornwallis Island up in the Arctic Islands, and we were shuttling Canadian Rangers around. And for those of you that don't know, Canadian Rangers they tend to be Inuit people that are paid or participate in patrolling the northern Arctic islands so that we can assert sovereignty up there and, kind of see what's going on, look for submarines, etc. But I remember thinking to myself, we were doing these because there was a woman that we were carrying around, and I don't know her exact age, but I guess she was in the ballpark of 50, and she was being dropped off alone on these islands. And I was thinking to myself that there's polar bears. This is the middle of the winter, so we're dropping her off, and I think we're in early March, so minus 50 would be normal Celsius, which I guess would also be Fahrenheit. But we would drop her off there, and thinking, in a battle of apex predators with her and the polar bear she's going to meet, I really genuinely don't know which one's going to come out on top. And it's a comical thought because at the end of the day, the polar bear is 2,000 pounds. It's probably going to win. But I can guarantee that woman would have given him something to think about. So that is the level of resiliency up there. And that is just fascinating to me because honestly, most of the people we meet in life are muffins. And I don't mean that to be mean. I just mean that we don't get pushed into the same environments. We don't get pushed into the same limits, and we don't get to see exactly what we are at our core. And these places, everything is like that. Everything is interesting because it is pushed to how far it can go in life. And that, to me, is beautiful. So that, in a nutshell, is why I find the North so fascinating. It's a subject I could talk about almost indefinitely because I love environments like this. It is just my favorite places on the planet. But enough exposition for that. So we'll finish this off. We are going to Tuk here from Inuvik. We're leaving going north. This day was punishing. It was somewhere between 3 and 5 degrees Celsius. You can't really see it in here, but we were getting wet the entire way, and we were pushing about I think it was forecast or not forecast, but it was reported at 40 kilometers an hour was the bottom end of the winds, but I think it got up near 70 kilometers an hour. And 3 to 5 degrees with a 40 to 70 kilometer an hour wind in rain and on loose gravel going north. It was a little pebbly. We did okay because we're on dirt bikes. A lot of people were really struggling with it. But we had to go. Off there on the left there, you will see what is a pingo, which is pretty neat. It is a freshwater ice heave. There's, I believe, almost 200 of them in this area. There is a national park based on them just outside Tuktoyaktuk. Here we are in Tuk. It's an interesting little town. It'll be a little eye-opening to people that haven't been into the far north. But a lot of the northern towns look like this, scattered throughout the islands. But it is a harsh environment. Technically, when you look north here, there are islands north, but I like to say that the next land is Russia. And it kind of feels like that. We'll be coming up to the shoreline here. They've done a nice job of developing kind of an erosion barrier there with some rocks, and they've put some... I believe you can camp in there now, like with a truck or whatever, but there's some picnic tables and so on that you can sit at right on the ocean. This is the northern point of the Trans-Canada Trail. I will let you look that up yourself, but if you want to see the most northern point and the trailhead, this is it in Tuktoyaktuk. Although, so here we have a little tourist backlog here. We are waiting for our turn at the sign. This friendly old couple was thankfully friendly enough to help us with a picture. But we had a rough day. James was feeling it for some other reasons, and he toughed it out through a very vicious day coming up here to Tuktoyaktuk. And this is the only shelter we could find. We tried macaroni and cheese here, but we ended up going to the visitor center, and some lady didn't specifically tell us we weren't allowed to, so we had macaroni and cheese there. It's your classic flag sign showing distance to all the different cities where people might come from visiting here. From here we went back to Inuvik for the night, but I saved a lot of the stories. I took a little bit of a different tack to kind of give the why of why we did the trip in this one. I hope it was entertaining for you or enlightening for you, that it wasn't just too much philosophy or me poking through. But beautiful place. It will always have a special place in my heart, not just Tuktoyaktuk, but the north as a whole. And I'm looking forward to telling some more, kind of returning to more of the normal format for the next trip. But I thought that because I could split this trip into two, or this section of the journey into two, that it would be an interesting place to kind of try to explain why you should come here and why it's unique. Whether because it is a extraordinarily long distance from most places that you would go, but I think honestly you'll see something and feel something that you don't feel anywhere else that you're likely to go in your life. So until next time, you know what? Stay warm, and the next episode should probably be in about 2 weeks.